It's dear Mr. President, and of course hearing from you guys today because there's certain questions. There's an expenditure question. It was interesting because as we go towards the two Irongos who joined us today, that expenditure question came up at some point or the other, and that Kenya doesn't have a revenue problem. Kenya doesn't have to do much more. Kenya has an expenditure problem. There's a problem here, and perception is reality to a lot of people, that if you can see the shillings that are flying around, literally flying around, and that doesn't translate into the pocket of Kenyans have a problem with it. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, you know what, the numbers that we're looking at, 4 billion shillings from presidency spending to 17 billion this year. And then what are you asking in terms of what it can show for? So we're talking, dear Mr. President, today about public expenditure. Kenyans are saying it's a little bit too much. Is it just the three of us in the room who are saying it's a little bit too much, or is this coming from you as well? And so when we talk about that expenditure, what are we actually saying? When you're saying you're spending too much, what are we actually saying? You'll talk to us this morning. Our lines to call are 0732 142 653 or 0732 142 650. Andrew, let's start with you. Mm-hmm. When we talk about an expenditure problem and that it's too much being spent, people are up in the air. We hear that rallies are held and millions are left behind to kind of placate the crowds. Is it an expenditure problem that you see? Could you literally say the money that you spend, take it and put it into schools, take it and put it into healthcare? We don't need to see it flying around.
Of course you would, and let's. I'm trying to put that conversation in context where you say, let's look at our debt. Mm-hmm. Because we've already said that out of this 4 trillion plus budget, possibly half of that is going to repay debt.
Yes.
And then another large chunk of that is going to pay salaries. And so our development space is almost non-existent. Mm-hmm. So even this money for dishing out is possibly borrowed money. Mm-hmm. So really, the question is, are we borrowing to steal? And the IMF, the IMF is not a saint. The IMF has its own interests, and countries that go into the IMF program without a clear agenda suffer. And Kenya is one of those. And I think what Nyakara really crystallized is that we lost our vision. Mm-hmm. Which was a very simple vision, 2030. Let's do a few significant projects that will stimulate growth. Instead, since 2012, because in 2012 our debt ceiling then was 600 billion. Mm. Yeah. In 2013, 2015, it was increased to 1.2 trillion. And then again, in that period to 2.5 trillion, 2019, 9 trillion, 2022, 10 trillion. Hey, these trillions are beginning to sound like,
all approved by Parliament.
All approved by Parliament. Mm-hmm. And the question then becomes, in the Kibaki era, there were mistakes done around corruption, but Kenyans were feeling the economy. Kenyans were feeling the growth. Small businesses were thriving. Mm-hmm. Since 2013, the expansionary policies of the Uhuru Ruto regime, after 2017 to the Ruto regime now, Kenyans are feeling the pinch. Mm-hmm. Revenues are falling. Cost of living is going up. Kenya business contribution is going down, so we are deindustrializing. So what is this mismatch? The mismatch is where the money is going. Mm-hmm. The fact that money is being borrowed expensively and then is being put in non-productive projects. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, we know that. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Isn't it?
It is.
Is it that we don't know? Or is it that we need to... how do we drive that agenda? So one of the things I think that civil society did is they really lit a fire in their engagements. I've had this in the with Bajeti Hub, the Okoa Uchumi Coalition, pressed the IMF to prioritize corruption. To say you can't keep lending when this money you're lending to steal. So the IMF now have put their foot down and said, unless these corruption issues are addressed, we are not lending. So that's one way you begin to squeeze the taps. But what are the other avenues that we need to invoke so that we can put pressure on an irresponsible government?
Well, I mean, when you look at things like actually fighting corruption from within, that you can talk about policies that need to be insisted on by, financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. I mean, I have my own conversation about why we're even still pandering to the whims of these international organizations, but that's a whole conversation for another day. But in this place where you're already caught in the thickets of borrowing over and over again, but the thing is that the trend does not change.
True.
It is very clear that money that had been borrowed that may have been misused did not start in 2026.
Yes.
That it has been a trend over time. So you want to ask yourself the question, you see what has been done with it before, or in this case, not been done with it. Something as simple as having a public debt register actually public to see where the money went is a practice that people have chosen not to dabble in. So when you say that we ask you this time around to be prudent about your public finance management and tell us exactly what's going on, that's great outside. But one of the things that you can be sure as day, perception is reality. If people in Kenya can actually see that corruption is punished, it is a precedent-setting activity, that it is actually punished and not these fly-by-night activities that we see where somebody has been arrested and then after that, they're let go and then the case is never heard of again. That if you actually see activity around punishing corruption, what that does is that it lets the people for who this perception is real, that, okay, we're actually doing something about it. And this is a society within which corruption is not just frowned upon, but is refused completely. But like I said, we're flirting with the idea of prosecuting and or punishing corruption, and you're never taking the girl home, essentially. You're not. You just want to say, oh yes, we're fighting corruption. But you're not. That at the very basic level, people know that I can divert how many million and I will get away with it.
Yeah. Because that's how it's been fashioned. That's how it's been played for a very long time. We keep on saying that we have all these agencies, we have all these officers that are there to fight corruption, but we're not even giving them the room to implement what it is they're supposed to do. So corruption for us, you look at even individuals who've been involved in corruption, what do? They're the same individuals who are cleared to run for office. So for us, corruption is a ticket item. It is a political tool to use during campaign period, but we never really sit down to ensure that we fight corruption. We will say nikiingia nitahakikisha ufisadi imeisha, but that's where the conversation ends, because moving forward, the very same individuals who said they will fight corruption are the ones who find themselves participating in corruption.
Like, let me ask you something.
Ask.
Nyota Fund, this is World Bank money.
Yes.
Right?
It's a loan.
It's a loan. The idea, and hear me out, the idea of that, putting money in the hands of people who can actually start a business that would then, you hope it would be sustainable, is a good idea.
Yes.
But it has been used as a political tool.
It has.
Unfortunately, without remembering that this is money that you actually have to pay back. So you want to be sure that the people that you're giving this money to, you can manage those processes to ensure that you're setting up. It's not just giving them money.
Yeah.
We're looking at things that people like yourself, Wadri, have been fighting for the longest time. What are you doing to ensure that the environment is conducive for people to set up business in the first place? True. How many licenses does a smoky seller, for example, require to then be able to run within the city? How much are they spending from that 22,000 shillings that you're going to give them to ensure that they have the proper licenses, that if they're renting out a place that they've been able to set it up and set it up properly, the things that you're putting in as safeguards, what roadblocks are standing in the way from them having that done? It's cyclical in nature. So if you're not doing all of those things, that's why it makes it easy for you to use it as a political tool.
But we look at Nyota, but forget that even when the government was getting in, we had the Hustler Fund, Hustler Fund and Nyota Fund is pretty much the same thing, just different names. But let's look at individuals who took Hustler Fund and what they ought to have done with that, become entrepreneurs, use that money to grow their businesses, pay back and keep on getting it as a loan. But what happened to it? Over 50 billion shillings
the money that you
has been
saved,
spent.
where
did it go?
Can I take a slightly different approach to this? Because Nyota Fund is one of many funds. There's many youth funds. Since I think the earliest fund was, is it Kazi kwa Vijana?
During COVID.
No.
Even before COVID.
There's one under the Kibaki, I think, was it in 2008 or was it towards the 2013 election, the earliest. And the World Bank was involved.
Yeah.
And even then, we argued that this is assistentialist. It is an economy that's not creating jobs. Then you create a fund to support young people. Now, it's good to support young people, but like you said, you want to support young people for enterprise. So the question becomes, why is the economy not creating and supporting youth employment and youth enterprise? Those are the issues to address, and these are structural issues. There's been diagnostics done. The World Bank did a report, I think, in 2005, when around 2005, it might have even been just after the Constitution passed, and it was looking at what are the structural barriers to the implementation of the Constitution. And it looked at things like land use, barriers. It looked at productivity. It just looked at a whole slew of structural issues. Now, these issues were then not addressed because the Uhuru government went into Big Four agenda, and then the present regime has gone into better. Instead of focusing on dealing with the structural bottlenecks, they do populist projects. So the problem we're having is populist development, and it's what Nyakera was telling us. It doesn't work. It's expensive.
Yeah.
It can't create jobs. So then government has to do kind of social protection, throw money at the problem. So the question we are asking is, how do we stop populist politics, which Kenyans have bought into?
True.
Even these campaigns we are seeing are not supposed to be taking place. They are not. And we will talk about it because we think maybe if these take place, we can unseat a government that violates the law all the time. But, the point is we should be we should be talking about illicit financial flows, 193 billion lost every year. Tax incentives, 103 billion lost every year. So the economy is losing 296 billion annually. That's the conversation we should be having, not
on
doing this.
But on the back
how
of
do we get out of
individuals,
populism?
on the back of individuals' direct engagement, because at the end of the day, populism as an idea is carried out by people.
True.
It's not something in the corner there where somebody says, well, let me touch a little bit. No, there's somebody with a populist agenda, and they're trying to keep their name or their idea on the hearts and minds of people. Because if I come and give you 22,000 shillings today, are you thinking World Bank? No, you're thinking about the person who was behind the giving me the money. You're thinking about the person who comes and says, well, they build one-bedroom houses in a place where they weren't there before. So exactly. But the populist agenda is carried out by people.
Yeah.
And so it's on the minds of people who say, well, if you're going to keep us in this idea or this bubble of a miracle coming in the future, or things that you can drop, morsels that you can give me to keep me engaged, and it's actually retrogressive in nature, then that is why we must remove you.
Yeah.
And that's the idea that comes into people's minds. We must remove you because you're keeping us encapsulated by this thing which is not reality.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, you give me 22,000 shillings, that's great, but you're going to have to pay it back. Where is it going to come from? Every Kenyan today owes 204,000 shillings.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the point
Today.
But the point of this populist politics is this. That and part of the argument I wish to make is that from 2013 to 2022, we have voted in the same government. It's just a matter of degrees. Why the same government? Because their policies are the same. They are still populist. It's just that one is rabidly, obviously more corrupt than the other. But the dysfunction in terms of the policies that they are implementing is the same. Because you heard what Nyakera said. It was the Big Four agenda that came and interrupted the Vision 2030. Vision 2030 wasn't a whole host of many projects. It was, let us systematically grow. We talk about going to Singapore.
No,
I'm going to bring it because Singapore grew because of the port.
Yep.
So actually what Nyakera was saying is that they had a vision. If you open up the port to the inland, and if you then do the Lapset corridor, you open up again the coastline to the northern partners,
Frontier,
you're then now opening up the development corridor so that you concentrate your money there and you grow. What did Big Four do? It came and disrupted all of that and began competing. So suddenly you have Vision 2030, you have Big Four projects. Now we have, on top of Big Four, we've got better. So we cannot do development that is populist, that ideas are just depending on, if William Ruto goes out in 2027, are we going to get another agenda?
So what stands in the way?
This is what is eating us.
That's my question.
Populism.
So what stands in the way? Because the populist agenda is carried out by individuals, by cartels, by groups of people. The eating occurs because something is engaged, someone. And so that's why it's in my head here that in order to that
we
development,
need to diagnose this problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are Kenyans directly involved in it? It doesn't matter who you vote in, and that's where the politics comes into play here. That it matters who you put in the position of leadership. It matters the person who's going to keep you engaged with these little morsels where you could be having the entire meal.
But the problem we have is the only seat we seem to concentrate on is the presidency.
And I'm saying it starts from the very bottom, whereby the MCA, who comes and tells you that, oh, by the way, we're going to make sure we put... No, it is you at that point, right there.
Look at
how many of us know? How many of us know of the 85 wards? And I keep saying of the 85 wards in Nairobi, for example. Do you know what the member of the county assembly is supposed to be doing?
Do you know your ward or your AMCA to start with? Because this is the person that you're supposed to be meeting on a daily basis. Yet we do not know the kind of people you vote in. Most of us go and say tunapiga suti, simply because we have followed this ideology that is being pushed by the president or the presidential candidate, and we say because we've bought what the presidential candidate is pushing, automatically that trickles down without us interrogating these other officers that are critical in ensuring that we get the kind of leadership that we deserve. You know, we talk about all these funds, right? Like Hustler Fund was around 50-something billion, right?
Yeah.
50-something billion, if had been spent in the country today, we would have enough schools. We would have all these projects, manufacturing that is ongoing. Today, kids would be going to school easily. We would be having more youth into these spaces. But then again, look at that, then look at Nyota Fund and many other funds that have come in, CDF and all these. If all this money was put in a basket and say, based off our vision, if it's 2030, this is what we want to do. If it's manufacturing, we'll put this money into manufacturing. We'll put this into industrial parks. We'll put this into empowerment of the youth. Not the empowerment that we know, but empowering the youth in the actual word and mean this. Where would be as a country? We're talking about 17 billion shillings for the president to just fly from Nairobi to Kisumu, from Kisumu to Luanda, 17 billion shillings for the president. What can 17 billion shillings do to Aseto to ensure that we get these services? We don't ask these tough questions as wananchi when we vote.
Absolutely.
Because when we go to the next election, we will not ask the president, we gave you 17 billion shillings. What is the return on investment? Because it is our money.
Those are big questions. And we actually want to hear from people this morning. Now, with all of those conversations happening, the spending that's taking place is not going towards these things. The spending that's taking place is going towards other aspects.
Yeah.
So we'll come back and take your calls this morning. Or are we saying, okay, it's okay, the government is spending the way in which they're spending and that's all right? Or are we saying, no, this has got to stop? And what's the way to stop it if it must? 10 o'clock. And we're taking your calls this morning. Let's hear in from you in terms of what your thoughts are. Is government spending a little bit too much? Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Hello, good morning. Please tell us your name and where you're calling in from.
Oh, my name is Jimmy Kimani. I'm calling from Malindi.
Yes, Jimmy, what are your thoughts? Spending by government too much, or is it just right? Hello, Jimmy.
It's just right.
Okay.
Let me tell you. Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I'm saying spending by government is just right.
Yes.
Spending by government is just right. The reason why Kenyans pretend to know too much while they know very less. And this makes the government spend a lot. Because if only people would understand what the president and what this government is doing, we will spend very little. But because most of the people don't even understand that I don't have to spend a lot for you to understand and for you to know what is going on. Look at the IMF. The government said it's very clear if people listen to what President Ruto told Macron, that IMF, we don't have a say. And we need to have and look for another body where we can get a say. They are taking one, we are taking one from them. And they are taking 5 from us.
I think we're not getting you very clearly, Jimmy. Maybe if you could move a little bit, then we can get you clearer.
Okay, so can you hear me?
This is a little bit better.
Okay, I'm saying this, if people would listen, did you hear about when I said about Macron and President?
Yes, we got that. Yes, we got that.
Very
Carry on.
Good, very good, very good. They are getting from us one. We are getting from them one, and they're saying they're donors. So they're just one, and we are giving them 5. So are they donors? Are they entrepreneurs?
So Jimmy, I think maybe what you need to do is that you need to maybe just take this call off and then try to call us back, because you keep disappearing, so we can't get your points. Maybe we can get you back in a minute. Try and call us back. Okay, so let's take a couple more of your calls. 0732 142 653, 0732 142 650. From your point of view, is government expenditure through the roof, or is it just right? I mean, if I can catch from the very beginning of what Jimmy was saying, I was like, you know what, we're doing the best that we can with what we have.
No. I don't know. We didn't get to hear all of what Jimmy was saying, but the facts are on the table that our budget is growing by about $1 trillion. Is it 500 billion or $1 trillion a year? Yet we are not able to finance health. We are not able to finance education. We are not financing agriculture. Agriculture now is being financed mainly by borrowing by farmers. So how can we? And then the revenue targets of KRA can't be met. We have a budget deficit. Our exports are in decline. So, apart from feeling it, the real indicator, and then unemployment's at an all-time high, and young people aren't able to get jobs. Obviously, this economic system is broken. But what Jimmy is trying to say is that President Ruto, Macron, but this problem started in 2013. So the model picked by Uhuru Ruto is not working for this country. And that's a model that's expansionist, debt-financed, and prioritizes infrastructure over social spending.
True.
And massive corruption. It was called state capture. It's been called very many things.
Yeah.
So apparently 11.5% of all revenue corruption is lost to collection is lost to corruption.
So if you have all this great expenditure, but you can't actually see what it's doing, then we have a problem. All right, let's take a couple more of your calls this morning. Okay, and that was just cut off. I remind you that number 0732142653, 0732142650. If you say that the budget is growing by, because and we see the example of it, 4.2 to 4.7 is what we're looking at this year, has increased by about 500 billion shillings. Yeah. We saw that from the year before, you had gone from 3.7 to 4.2. So that's what you're looking at. Another 500 billion. So if it's increasing by that much, and the very fundamentals, which are securitizing agents of the livelihood of Kenyans, cannot be met. Because what are the things that we are crying about every day? Is this same education? Is this our farmers who are shouting? It is healthcare, where the teachers, civil servants are saying, well, not us. We're not going back if you can't, if you can't secure us from even the contributions that we ourselves are making. The people who are crying every day are the fundamentals that you speak about. So you ask yourself, if it's rising, then where is it going? If you're spending more, of which that spend is still borrowed money. Yes. Mind you, that to meet the budget shortfall, there's a lot of borrowing that happens. If that is increasing, where is it going?
It's going to debt servicing.
A very long time we've been told, I remember when the president was addressing the nation and they gave economic indicators showing that on the macro level, the economy is doing well. But on the micro is where rubber meets the road, because that is where I'm at. Am I able to buy that unga at 150 today that, remember, has been reduced? Am I able to buy two as opposed to before? Am I able to buy a single one? So there is no way you tell me that the economy is working for me while it's working for the macro level. No, that is skewed mathematics that doesn't make sense.
And who should it work for?
Yeah.
All right, let's
but it's also not working for the macro, because our exports our exports are falling.
All right, let's take some calls this morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Is this SpiceFM?
Yes, it is. What's your name and where are you calling in from?
Shiro from Nairobi.
Yes, Shiro. What are your thoughts? Government expenditure. Are you okay with it?
No, I think we have spent a little bit way too much, and I agree with what Onjiro is saying in the essence of it's our policies. Our systems are not really mapped out for the people. They're really not mapped out to support growth. It's almost as if we keep going round the circle. I mean, entrepreneurship is good, but not everybody is built to be an entrepreneur. So you need to create opportunities for the masses. Why do we only have jobs and major organizations in the big city, but we are not expanding to other regions of Kenya where things just seem not to be moving? Why is it that you have to come all the way from far away to Nairobi to get a big job? If you look like places like in the US and all, not everything is based out of Washington, D.C. Not everything is based out of New York or California. We have big organizations headquartered in North Carolina, Philadelphia, and all these other places, making it possible for a spread across the board.
I hear what you're saying.
So we seem to be focused on, we are focused on, let's give the youth 20,000 or the Hustler Fund of 500, but to hoodwink them as we are stealing the rest of the money.
Ouch. Shiro, thank you for your call. Of course, I mean, want to then be able to hear this morning, hoodwinking as a form of a bribe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can't create jobs, but here, take this money, hush money, don't ask any questions. Yeah. It's not sustainable. Exactly. It's borrowed money. Yeah. And that's what you were saying, the Hustler Fund and now Nyota Fund, same diagnosis, actually. odious debt. We need provisions on odious debt.
That's the question. Shiro, thanks for your call this morning. Asante, let's hear from some others this morning as they do come in. This expenditure issue, is it in the minds of people? I often think that there's no connect for a lot of people. That when, State House, the presidency, because we understand there are different departments within that, come and they say, okay, well, we had 4 billion, we need 17. And that anybody who's on the outside, who we have to understand that the majority of the people are taking part in what we call the small economy. At that point where he said not everybody's buying a 2 kg packet of sugar. There's no connect between, okay, so when State House will spend 17 billion shillings.
What am I losing?
Or how does it affect me?
Let's just look at it. Because if we talk about 17 billion shillings, we'd have 5 to 8 modern level 5 hospitals. We would upgrade sub-county hospitals with the ICU units. We are able to tarmac 150 to 300 kilometers of tarmac road, depending on the standards. We are able to build 200 to 300 new schools or modernize existing ones with classrooms, labs, and ICT centers. When we talk about water, we are able to provide clean water to millions of people through boreholes, dams, and pipeline. You talk about energy, we can connect hundreds of thousands of homes to electricity and invest in renewable energy projects like solar. You can go on and on. We talk about farmers, support millions of farmers with subsidies, fertilizer seeds, build storage facilities to reduce post-harvest losses, and fund irrigation schemes that transform dry areas into productive land. You can go on and on. 17 billion shillings. We've not talked about 50 billion Hustler Fund. We've not talked about Nyota Fund. Now think about bringing all these billions to question up to around 500B. What could that do to Kenya?
It's necessary for us to ask those questions because there has to be a connect with reality at some point. And this is not even being political, it's just being basic. That if you say a country has the ability to use its own resources and then actually be able to create more with the ones that you already have. And if that is not happening repeatedly, you cannot be in a state where you, number one, don't interrogate or are not involved in the process to overturn such activity. And that's what we're talking about today. And I won't lie, I love the crowds that I'm seeing in whereby you want to imagine that those crowds are actually yearning for a change about some of the things that we speak of today. But you know what? It is absolutely useless if that inertia doesn't translate to you going to an office, registering to vote, and then on the second Tuesday of August 2027 actually coming out and voting. If you do not, guess what? You've wasted Vihiga, you've wasted Bungoma, you've wasted Kisumu, you've wasted Nakuru, you've wasted Mombasa, and you will waste the other venues where you will go.
And you've wasted productivity.
You've missed a vital step. You need to get your voter's card. But at the end of the day, possibly 90% of those who will be on the ballot box will be nominated by the political party. And what happened in 2022 is that some 8 million voters who were eligible did not take part. And the reason they didn't, I imagine, I guess ID issues and all, they were not interested in the offering. And this is because the political parties are not able to give us leaders we believe in. So beyond that voter's card is the political party.
But political parties are not political parties in Kenya.
If you get poor nominees, if the biggest gangster, highway robber, fighting rape, murder charges,
corruption cartel number one,
is your nominated choice, and they are competing with similar. You know how there's a particular ballot that I scratched. I put X0 because I was like, neither of these will deliver for me. So it is not just the voter's card. That's the first step. If we don't tackle political parties, and how do you tackle political parties? I think we have to register.
I think that we need to be aware. We need to be aware. We need to be aware of the fact that political parties in this country are not being used for the original idea for which political parties were meant. Political parties are just political vehicles so that you can nominate Dennis today. And if I went to your party and you didn't give me a nomination, guess what? I will go to the registrar tomorrow and I will have Ndu's Peacock Party And by the end of the day, I could have 1,000 agents in my party.
No, other peacocks.
It has nothing. Thank you. It has nothing to do with ideological drive.
True.
And if it did and followed the drive of ideology, then these people that you speak about, which would be on the menu for which you would look and say, you know what, I would actually vote for this person, or this person feels the need. You know why? The people who are sure of the position are not joining those political parties. They are not. Why do we have the independent? Because two things happen. Number one, you seek nomination, you don't get it. Number two, the ideology that you would fight for or live for through your leadership is not offered by that political party.
But that's the same argument.
So it's like saying, it's like saying, go to a political party, but that political party is not vested in ideology.
In 1990s, prior to the constitution reform process, we didn't have public participation, and we didn't have public participation and budget monitoring. We didn't have social audit. We didn't have citizens calling to talk about accountability. So it doesn't mean just because it's not happening, it can't happen. The point I'm making is that our constitution process has brought us thus far. We have entered into government as citizens. We are holding these guys into account. But the weakest link is that assembly. The policies, by the way, are being enacted. That's why we have Vision 2030. Because government fears enough to pass a balanced budget. By the way, those budgets are approved by the Controller of Budget because they comply. But then, once they comply and they are out of the public participation space and they go to the legislature, that's where they bribe. That is where brown envelopes are taken.
These individuals who you're talking about, who guess what? They belong to these political parties.
And you see,
that's the point.
And that's
so I'm saying our next line of fighting corruption is where politics starts.
And I think it's therefore upon us to look at the kind of political parties we have and the kind of offerings they bring forth, right? Individuals who are in these political parties. Because as Wananchi as well, like you said, you looked at a ballot paper and you put an X because there was no one right there who you would identify with because no one fit the bill.
Exactly.
Therefore, we then go back to agencies that we have put in place to ensure that in one way or the other, individuals who show up, who end up at the ballot are clean individuals. Here we talk about NCIC, EACC, ODPP.
Dennis, don't talk about NCIC. They're out of them. Those ones exited.
All right.
Talk about the rest.
Let's talk about
NCIC,
the rest.
Let them rest.
But you see, the reason why we even putting them to rest is because they have let us down. They know what they're supposed to do. They choose not to do it.
Yes.
So therefore, as Wananchi, we look at the office of the Register of Political Parties and the regulations that are there even in law. Why is it that Register of Political Parties today, IEBC, are silent when we see all these politicians, including the president, breaking the law simply because they have done that before? Nothing has been done with them. In retrospect, as Wananchi as well, we need to tell these individuals, we voted you in.
Dennis, let's be honest here. IBC, EHCC produced a list of ineligibles.
Yes.
IBC produced regulations to bar those individuals, and they took it to Parliament. This issue, I think, even ended up in court, and the ruling was you can't be barred until you have exhausted all the legal,
yes.
Provisions.
That is Article 90 of the Constitution,
legal
yes.
provisions means, and we've been in court on the CDF, we have not exhausted even after 10 years because we have gone all the way to the Supreme Court and now we are back to the High Court. So we are caught in a cat and mouse game of how do you bar these aspirants who are not eligible. The legal provisions, Parliament has no incentive to do it. That's why they thwarted. They will not.
Yes.
They're the ones who diluted the Elections Act. They're the ones who diluted all the
Ethics Act, Chapter 6.
The Ethics Act as well, and the enforcement. So we need to recognize lessons from Singapore. Before I was interrupted by Ndu, I was taking us to Singapore.
No, we don't.
And what I wanted to say is lessons from Singapore, because they are documented. You can't fight corruption if the top leadership is corrupt. You can't
There you
fight
go.
corruption if the police, the investigating bodies are corrupt. You can't fight corruption if the anti-corruption agencies are confused and overlapping.
Don't have power to
so
bite.
we do not have the conditions for fighting corruption. That means we need to find spaces to fight. Even during Moi's time, we didn't have the space to fight corruption. We didn't even have the space to overthrow an authoritarian government, but we found those gaps. So for me, I'm saying, what are these spaces that we can use to continue our constitutional agenda? Because despite Moi, we were able to enact a constitution.
Okay, maybe you can think about
That
what
is
those spaces
progressive.
are, please, because I would like us to leave with what are
one.
those spaces, even
Yes.
one of those spaces. But
I-
before that, let's take a call from somebody. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Ondari.
Yes, Ondari.
I'm calling from Nyamira.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
My take is that this government is too expensive for us. The president is making travels here and there, promising wananchi things which does not exist. Two, the president is hosting wananchi in State House for many days, or maybe every week, spending too much money. The money which is supposed to be spent, especially in education, people are lamenting, heritage, people are lamenting, but he is cooking food in State House for people to eat. Three, the government, the president alone has captured parliament. Look, people like the Speaker of the National Assembly, what is doing. I think if this government is taken to task, it's supposed to go home. Ruto alone is taking people to the ocean. We are not happy with the things Ruto is doing, because especially when he came to Nyamira, he promised people so many tokens, giving hundreds and billions of money, which does not exist. He launched some projects which he has launched for more than 3 times, but has never taken off. What does that mean? He uses money which he borrows to eat at the State House, travel around the country, campaigning from January to January. This government must go home. Thank you.
Ondari, thank you very much for your call this morning. It's interesting to hear some of the things that you've said, but worth it. I mean, I just listened to what he had to say there. I mean, and backed it up. This is what we see. Reality, rather, perception is reality. This is what we see, unless you can tell me something different.
No, I agree.
We've launched a project 3 times. You know, but I think these at that time where wananchi need to ask, okay, fine, you've promised 20 billion shillings. How are you going to implement it?
No,
Indeed.
wrong question. The moment you're promising wananchi, you're in populist development mode. And that is our problem. Because what we are saying here is, had we stuck to Vision 2030, there'd be no projects to launch, because there'd be a handful being implemented and taking the duration that they're supposed. They finish, they start others. But now, because of this push for projects, there's a need to keep launching and keep initiating. So our development is not based on ability to deliver or intention to implement. It's based on eating incentives and capturing the popular favor, so that they can elect you again, so you can steal more. So the question we have to ask is, how do we disrupt this citizen demand for projects?
Is it a citizen demand for project then?
And, oh yes, there is. And the eating cartels. That's the question. And my proposal is that the IMF report, much as IMF is not our best friend, IMF is like that. It's like that uncle who interferes in business, but in family business, but maybe he's better than the other uncle.
Yeah.
So you use this better uncle to fight the worst uncle. You have to be very careful. There's an opportunity. Mozambique used that particular type of report to sue the government. And they were able to actually reclaim a lot of money and stop a huge procurement. So what in that IMF report is actionable, that can bring people to account, and we can bring the force of law upon them. Then we still need to figure out this political party question, because that is where all the evil is being brewed. All of it. Yes.
And this is what I'm saying. That there's been and I think because we insist on people using these political parties, which we've already know very well that is in a lot of ways is a skewed attempt towards governance. That what it was originally designed to do, if that is the model you choose, then go with the prerequisite or the standard that has been set by the political party as an idea in the very beginning. Otherwise, don't tell us that you're using a political party system based on ideology and then the implementation of said ideology if you find your way into government. Don't tell us you're using that if you're just going to use it for, okay, I need people on my side, because that's what we're seeing it's being used as today. Choose something else. And perhaps it's also time for us to now start to redefine systems of governance. How are you going to do it? Are you going to say there needs to be a dictator? Tell us, and then we know that's what we are doing.
This is the direction you're taking.
But we have a mix of so many. We have a mix of so many things, and then we go out there and claim that we are democratic, but we are not. We go and we say we're using political parties, but we're not. We have created vehicles where people can then be populist.
Who's we?
Every time you go to vote, that's what you've done. Every time you go to vote, you've entrenched the system that allows these things to continue to happen.
No, but I've done my part. What we're saying is that the political class has failed Kenyans. Kenyans are mostly, not entirely, doing their part. I mean, they don't do their part when they fall into the populism of political actors. But what we are saying is from an authoritarian dictatorship, we have now moved to a competitive democracy with a progressive constitution. What do we do now to consolidate these gains? So we are moving. We are at 30-40%. How do we get to 60% in practical terms? Because we are not, Kenya's doing pretty well. Our constitution is very good. We are here, we can talk and lambast government. There are places you can't do this.
Okay, let's take your last thought then.
But I think even as we're doing well, right, Mwananchi as well has a stake in that. Because we can't as well just sit here and every other time. We are the goons being hired, then complain about goons. We are the ones appearing in these political rallies.
Please don't call Kenyans goons.
You know,
the goons are the ones who pay them.
But then again, it is us Wananchi who allow ourselves to be paid. You know, so if we as Wananchi as well said no to this nonsense, if we as Wananchi said we need these political parties to change, they will hear us. Because like Nyakera said, Irungu Houghton said, 55 million Kenyans are stronger than 9,000 individuals sitting somewhere in an office.
Indeed.
Very powerful. Thought of the day.
Absolutely.
The week.
Wants to think about. We can't let this conversation go. It's too important not to. Don't be a stranger is what they've said. Thank you for coming. And, we've reminded you what it's like to wake up at 4 in the morning. Thank you for hosting with us this morning. And thank you for starting off the week with this conversation. It had to come. With us in the Situation Room this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.